for those of you who don't know who Cubic are, I'm always hesitant to describe it this way, but I describe us to most people as the oyster people, which is what we do. We run the oyster system in London, but it also makes us sound like ragged people trudging along the Thames foreshore looking for shellfish. We do similar things around the rest of the world, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sydney, Brisbane. Big-scale transportation systems, revenue collection. And it's that has given us the direction that the company is now taking and an insight into how we think cities will work in the future in terms of mobility and transportation. Populations are growing in the developed and in the developing world. And in fact, what business are we in? We're in the business of helping the lifeblood of cities to flow. And the lifeblood is you and me, all of us. And we're in the business of working out what to do when a thrombosis happens that stops the lifeblood getting to where it needs to be, whether that's for leisure or equally importantly for work, employment, for jobs. And I'm going to show you, or tell you very briefly how we think that will work. What are the restrictions that we're facing? What are the challenges? Firstly, space. Look at London. You can't make tube stations bigger. You can't make tunnels wider. You can't have double-decker trains. We have to do something in London, in other cities, to manage the demand, to manage the way in which people access mobility in the city. It has to be cost-effective, and it has to be, if it's going to maintain public support, it has to be sustainable. Now, we see some trends happening now. Firstly, the speed of data transmission. Richard talked about it. You can get massive amounts of data transmitted instantly. You can also run computer systems that will translate raw data into intelligence and get that information back out using the same transmission systems to people who need it, almost instantaneously. And the other thing is, everybody, and you see it whenever you go to any conference, everybody is connected to the internet on their smartphones, and most of them while the speaker's speaking. But we won't worry about that now. People's customer service expectations are changing as well, and that's being driven by people like Amazon, it's being driven by Uber, it's being driven by iTunes. You know, the world's biggest music retailer doesn't have any shops. The world's biggest taxi company doesn't have any cars. That's the way the world is going. There's a rise in the sharing economy, and that's going to mean, as we have more cars being shared on our roads, more and more of the roads are going to need to be managed better than they are now. And we see the next wave including lots more ride pooling, ride sharing, lots more vehicles talking to cities and cities talking back. And we need to turn that to our advantage. We will be charging vehicles and users of vehicles according to the roads they use and the times they use, rather than historically, as we've done it, according to the amount of fuel they use and the size of their engines. And I don't think it'll be too long before, in this country and in much of the rest of the developed world, we see road tolling charging as being completely normal, because that is coming. And we will move away from what is happening now, and that's what people see as real-time passenger information wherever you want it. We will move to predictive information, telling you what is going to happen in 2 hours as a result of what's just happening now, and using that information to change people's behavior. And the way you change people's behavior, you can probably guess, it's not through persuasion, it's not through appealing to their environmental responsibility, it's through money. Paying, rewarding them for doing something that the city needs them to do, that will be to their advantage, their fellow travelers' advantage, and the city's advantage. We have a strategy, a vision for the future, which we call Next City. I must emphasize, I'm not here to advertise Cubic. There are other businesses doing this. We would like to see the world change the same way they would, because I think there's opportunity for everybody. But for us, our strategy is called Next City. It sees 3 things coming together: an integrated customer experience across all transport modes, a single travel account where you will be charged according to the mode you use, and those who are using the most responsible modes at the best times will be charged the least, and vice versa. And being able to integrate all your analytics across all your operations to optimize the way all those transport networks, whether they're public or private, all work together. And we think consumers will become much more mode agnostic. They're really only interested in how much it's going to cost, and what are my options. They're not really interested in a particular mode. And I think you will see the rise of car sharing, where people currently wouldn't use a car to get into a city, but if they know that car is going to be at a place at a predictable time and get somewhere at a predictable time, they will use it, and it will be driven autonomously. People are also habitual, and we believe that if you can turn that habit to your advantage, you should do so, because habitual travelers don't expect problems, and when problems occur, they're outraged, they're upset, they will carry on the way they have before, they'll go down to the tube station just hoping that things will be better. What we anticipate is that I'll give you an example rather than tell you a theory. Imagine you live in Hackney, you work in Bond Street. Typically now, if there's an overrunning engineering work on the central line, you would probably find out about that either through the radio, maybe through Twitter, maybe through TfL website. 10 years' time, you would not need to set your alarm because the system knows when to wake you up. Your phone would wake you to say you wouldn't need to know what it was. Something's happened right now, last 2 minutes, somebody's gone under a train perhaps, or we've seen some engineering overrun. There's no delay at the moment, but you're still in bed. So what we suggest you do is get up 20 minutes early, get this bus that's coming in 40 minutes' time, change halfway, get onto another bus, and when you get onto that second bus, your phone will get whatever you choose as your incentive, arrives on the phone, whether that's 50% off at Starbucks till 11 o'clock, as a reward to get you to work on time, so you're being rewarded for the thing that's doing you good. The city doesn't have the problem of everybody turning up at a tube station when they don't need to, because the system is not running. And the operator, whether it's TfL or anybody else, it's not just London this affects, it could be anywhere. The operator gets a better service. It's a better option for them being able to manage their service because they haven't got to deal with all those people frustrated. They've managed to move them around. And the way that happens is by tracking those people's movements. And that's going to bring us to the privacy question, which I will spend 1 minute on in a second. Because we believe in order to be able to use that data effectively, you have to analyze it, predict what it will mean, communicate it to people, and then on top of all of that, continually engender their trust in what you are going to do with that data, how you're going to use it, and how you're going to deploy it to make your system work better. And I would leave you with 2 key points. Number 1, all of this technology, the sort of things Richard talked about, the sort of things I think everybody will talk about, it's all available now. And yet we still spend so much time talking about it. Again and again, we have conferences about it. Everybody gets together, oh, we really must do this. You know, I'm so frustrated at the number of conferences we go to where they still talk about, should we have a smart card? You know, it's like Oyster in London. Smart cards are 40 years old. You know, look, London is moving to, contactless payment now. It's massively successful. It's had no publicity whatsoever. You know, there's over 120 million journeys have been taken using contactless bank cards on the tube network and on the buses without any publicity whatsoever. How many complaints have they had? Under 20. By any stretch of the imagination, that's a pretty successful system. The second point I would make is about privacy. A website called Design Taxi ran a little story about 18 months ago. What should we do in New York to replace the Metro card? It's a magnetic stripe card. Up comes the answer. Smart card like they have in London. Oyster, brilliant idea. Delay a few seconds, somebody pops up. Oh, great, another way for the government to track me. Another pause for a few seconds. And then up comes the most brilliant comment I've ever seen. Jason, I hate to be the one to break this to you. Nobody cares where you're going. And what's more, I've just looked at your public profile on Facebook. I know your house is empty on Saturday night, and I know where you and Janice are going for the evening. And those are the same people who are paranoid and worried about their data privacy. So if I would say one thing, leave with one question, what if we could make loss of privacy a good thing?